A Bronx mother stabbed to death inside of her home Saturday morning. Police say by her boyfriend.
She was stabbed in her own bedroom by her boyfriend Juan Rivas while her children were home. Her daughter ran toward the screaming. Her teenage son pushed his sister out of the way and put his own body between her and that knife. And her youngest, 12 years old, stayed hidden in his room through all of it, waiting for it to be over. He did not even know his mother was dead until days later. He thought the family gathering was a party. Welcome to Behind Dark Crime. This is where we tell the stories they wanted forgotten. Domestic violence, relationship murders, cases that went cold while families still wait for answers. Raw truth, no filter. If you're about that truth, subscribe and lock in with us. Now let's get into today's case. Yesenia Hall was 42 years old. She lived in Concourse Village, a neighborhood in the South Bronx that sits along Sherman Avenue. If you know the Bronx, you know that area. Working class, tight-knit. The kind of block where people know each other and the walls between apartments are thin enough to hear conversations you were not invited into. Yesenia was raising 3 children in that apartment. Her oldest, Jayla Maldonado, was 22. Her son was 16, and her youngest boy was 12 years old. By all accounts from people who knew her, she was the kind of woman who held things together. Ambitious, bright. The kind of mother whose whole world was those kids. The man in her life was Juan Rivas, 45 years old. He had been with Yesenia long enough that the family knew him, long enough that he was living in that apartment, long enough that the neighbors on that floor had already formed an opinion about the energy coming from behind that door. He was not a stranger who wandered in. He was the man Yesenia had chosen to build her life around. And that is the part of this story that makes it so heavy, because the danger was not outside. It was already inside. Now, here is the thing about Juan Rivas that the courtroom would later lay out in full. This man had a history, not a rumor, not a family suspicion. A documented, on-the-record, arrested and charged history of putting his hands on Yesenia Hall. In January of 2022, he was arrested for punching her in the face. In November of 2018, he grabbed her arm and threw her to the ground in a rage that also led him to destroy a TV, a door, and a picture frame inside their home. And those were just the incidents involving Yesenia specifically. His record went further back than that. Assault arrests in 2011 and 2012, weapon possession going all the way back to 2003. Let me tell you something. Prosecutors confirmed that police had responded to 5 prior violent incidents between Rivas and Hall. 5 times. 5 times officers showed up to that address, documented what they found, made their arrests, and left. And 5 times the cycle continued. The family was not blind to it either. Yesenia's brother, Edwin Maldonado, had been watching this for years and trying everything he could think of. The family even attempted to get Rivas into therapy. Edwin had offered to help him find work. Rivas was a licensed airplane mechanic, but his criminal record had cost him his career, and for years he had been unable to hold a real job. The family was trying to stabilize him. They were invested in making it work, make it make sense, because the man they were trying to help was the same man who had already put his hands on their sister multiple times. And yet, that is how these situations move. You love someone. You are connected to someone. You believe people can change. You try. And sometimes trying costs you everything. Anyways, the neighbors on Sherman Avenue already had a read on what was happening in that apartment. The woman next door had heard commotion coming from behind that door before. Not once, more than once. Enough times that it registered as a pattern. But Yesenia never came out to ask for help. She never knocked on anyone's door. She managed it the way a lot of women in these situations manage it, quietly, internally, and alone. Because that is what survival inside a situation like that looks like. You do not want to make it a whole thing. You tell yourself you can handle it. You tell yourself it will not go that far. And then one morning it does. It was a Saturday. The kind of Saturday morning where the Bronx is still settling into itself. Bodegas just opening, trains running light, most of the building still in bed. Inside that apartment on Sherman Avenue, something had already been going wrong before the rest of the block woke up. We do not know exactly what was said. We do not know what pushed things past whatever line existed between the night before and that morning. What we know is that at some point before 7 a.m., Juan Rivas and Yesenia Hall were in her bedroom, and whatever was happening between them had already turned into something the children in that apartment could hear through the walls. Jayla, 22, was the first to register it. She woke up to her mother screaming, and her 16-year-old brother woke up to the same sound. Both of them moved toward that bedroom. Both of them were trying to get to their mother, but her son got there first, and when he saw what was happening inside that room, Juan Rivas, knife in hand, going at his mother, that 16-year-old boy made a decision that most grown adults would not have had the presence of mind to make. He turned to his sister and pushed her back, out of the way, away from the knife, away from Rivas. He put himself between her and all of it. So now, Rivas turned the knife on the boy. He stabbed that teenager in the neck, in the back, in the shoulder, in the cheek, multiple times. This was not a warning or a graze. This was a man driving a kitchen knife into a 16-year-old child who had done nothing except try to protect his family. And while that was happening, Rivas went back to Yesenia. He stabbed her in the neck, the torso, the back, multiple times. Jayla was on the phone with 911. She had stepped back because her brother pushed her back, and she stood there and made that call while her mother and her brother fought for their lives on the other side of that bedroom. The 12-year-old was in his room. Doctor, closed, hiding, waiting for the noise to stop. He did not come out. He did not fully understand what was happening. He just stayed there in the quiet of his bedroom while everything on the other side of his door fell apart. The neighbor's daughter was the one who woke her mother up. She heard the commotion and pulled her mother out of sleep to say that something was not right. By the time that neighbor was on her feet and moving, the screaming had already stopped. And silence after that kind of screaming is not relief. It means it is over. It means whatever was going to happen already happened. Yesenia had been heard by people outside that door. Her voice had carried through those walls loud enough for a child to recognize that something was wrong. And her last words, the last thing she said that her daughter was able to hear, were not a call for help. They were an apology. My mother's last words to me were, "I'm sorry, I'm dying, I'm sorry." Because Yesenia Hall spent what little she had left, not fighting, not calling out, but telling her daughter she was sorry for dying, for leaving, for everything. That is what years of being in a situation like this does to a person. It makes you feel responsible for your own pain. It makes you apologize for being a victim. And in her final moments, Yesenia Hall carried that weight all the way out. Emergency services got the call and responded to 956 Sherman Avenue. When they arrived, they found Yesenia Hall and her 16-year-old son, both with stab wounds to their upper bodies. Both were rushed to Lincoln Medical Center, the trauma center closest to that part of the Bronx. The scene inside that apartment told officers everything they needed to know about how violent the attack had been. Blood on the floor. A bloody kitchen knife left behind. Days later, when news crews arrived, there was still blood on the wall next to the staircase. That apartment had witnessed something that does not clean up easily. Yesenia Hall did not survive that ride to Lincoln. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. Her son made it into surgery. The wound to his neck was severe enough that it left him temporarily unable to speak. He could not call out. He could not tell anyone what he needed or how he felt or what he had just been through. He could only write. And the first thing that boy wrote from his hospital bed, in his own handwriting on a piece of paper to the doctor who worked on him, was this: "Thank you so much, doctor. You're a lifesaver, no joke." Moving on, because that note deserves a moment of silence before we continue. A teenager who just watched his mother die, who took multiple stab wounds to his own body trying to protect his family, woke up in a hospital bed unable to speak, and his first instinct was to say, "Thank you." That is the kind of person Yesenia Hall raised. and the fact that she did not get to see him grow into the man he is becoming. That is the part of this that does not go away. Juan Rivas did not stay at the scene. After what he did in that apartment, he changed his clothes and walked out. He left Yesenia's body, left her son bleeding, left Jayla standing there with a 911 call and a 12-year-old still hiding in his room, and he walked out like he had somewhere to be, like distance was going to do something for him. It did not. Later that same day, Juan Rivas turned up at a local hospital seeking treatment for wounds on his own hand. His right hand, the hand that held that knife, had been injured during the attack, and that is where officers found him. He did not make it far. He did not outsmart anyone. He walked himself right into custody by needing medical attention for the damage done to the hand he used to kill Yesenia Hall. When he appeared in Bronx criminal court, his right hand was still bandaged at the wrist and the palm. The audacity. I said what I said. Officers had arrived at 956 Sherman Avenue shortly after 6:30 in the morning and walked into a scene that told its own story before anyone said a word. 2 victims with stab wounds, a bloody kitchen knife left at the scene, blood on the floor, blood on the walls, and a suspect who was already gone. The investigation that followed was not complicated by mystery. There was no question about who did this. Jayla had witnessed it. The neighbors had heard it. The building had a history with it. What investigators were working with was a clear picture of what happened and a man who had walked out of that apartment thinking he could put distance between himself and what he had done. What the investigation did do was pull back the full record on Juan Rivas. And what that record showed was a man the system had been dealing with for over 2 decades. Prosecutors laid it out in court. 5 prior violent incidents between Rivas and Hall that police had responded to. 2 of those incidents resulted in specific arrests with documented details. A prior violent felony conviction, 2 prior misdemeanor convictions, a failure to appear in court for one of his previous cases, weapon possession going back to 2003. This was not a background check that came back clean. This was a man with a paper trail long enough to wallpaper that Sherman Avenue apartment. And yet he was still there, still in that home, still in Yesenia's life. And the system that kept documenting his behavior never found a way to permanently remove him from her orbit before it was too late. The family had not been silent about it either. Yesenia's brother Edwin had been raising the alarm for years. He knew about the injuries. He knew about the pattern. He told the press plainly, "I know she has received multiple previous injuries from him. The guy is not good and he had a record before, and we have tried so much." And then he added the line that hits the hardest when you sit with it. "I know the city can only do so much when it becomes domestic. There have been multiple distresses. The list is long, God mercy." The list is long. That is a man who watched a system fall short over and over again and still found a way to speak about it without completely breaking down in public. That kind of restraint in the middle of that kind of grief deserves its own recognition. Anyways, Rivas did not make it far after leaving that apartment. He changed his clothes, walked out, and spent the hours after the attack apparently believing he had bought himself some time. And later that same day, he walked into a local hospital looking for treatment on that hand. That is where officers found him. Juan Rivas was arraigned in Bronx criminal court. The charges read against him were extensive: second-degree murder, attempted murder, manslaughter, assault, criminal possession of a weapon, endangering the welfare of a child, and harassment. When he stood before Judge Yadira Gonzalez-Taylor, his right hand was still bandaged at the wrist and palm. He pleaded not guilty. The judge looked at his record, looked at the charges in front of her, and made her decision. No bail. Juan Rivas was remanded to Rikers Island to wait for his next court date. He was not going home. He was not getting to sleep in a familiar bed or walk a familiar block while Yesenia Hall's family tried to figure out how to bury her and raise her children without her. The courtroom will move at the pace courtrooms move, slow, procedural, deliberate. But the facts of that morning are already laid out. 2 people stabbed inside their own home. 1 dead, 1 recovering, 3 children whose lives were permanently altered before the sun was fully up on a Saturday. Now, let's go back to that youngest boy, because his part of the story did not end when the screaming stopped. He was 12 years old. He had been hiding in his bedroom through the entire attack. He stayed there while his mother was being stabbed in the next room. He stayed there while his brother took the knife. He stayed there while Jayla called 911. He stayed there while medics arrived and took 2 people out of that apartment on stretchers. And somehow, in the chaos of all of that, nobody sat down with that child and told him what had happened to his mother. Days passed, and then the family gathered. Yesenia's people came together the way families do after something this devastating, filling a space with grief and presence and the kind of quiet that settles over a room when everyone knows something terrible is true. And that 12-year-old boy walked out of his room and looked around at all those people and asked why everyone was there. He thought there was a party. His uncle Edwin pulled him into a private room, and he told him. And that little boy's face did what a child's face does when the world stops making sense. Eyes wide open, very small tears, nervous and scared. He had been living in the same apartment as a man with 5 violent arrests. He had heard things through walls that no child should hear. And now he was standing in a private room, finding out that his mother was gone and she was never coming back. Make it make sense. Because that moment, that private room, those small tears, that is the cost that never makes it into a charge sheet. That is the damage that does not show up in a criminal complaint. And that little boy is going to carry that moment for the rest of his life. Here is something that needs to be said, because Yesenia Hall's story did not happen in a vacuum. Sherman Avenue and the broader Concourse Village area of the Bronx have seen this kind of loss before. Domestic violence in that neighborhood, and in neighborhoods like it across New York City, is not new and it is not rare. It is a pattern that plays out behind the same kinds of doors, in the same kinds of buildings, with the same kinds of warning signs that get documented and filed and responded to, and ultimately, not enough. Women in working-class Bronx neighborhoods have been losing their lives to intimate partner violence for decades. The names change, the addresses change, the faces change. The outcome stays the same. What makes Yesenia's case land so hard is not that it is unusual. It is that it is not. 5 documented incidents, a man with a record stretching back 20 years, a family that was trying, neighbors who heard the noise, and still, a mother died in her bedroom before 7 in the morning while her children were home. But hey, the conversation about what changes this does not start in a courtroom. It starts with people deciding that the noise on the other side of the wall is worth getting up for. It starts with systems that do more than document and release. It starts with communities that do not wait until there is blood under the door to take it seriously. Jayla Maldonado is 22 years old. She described herself as the next mother to her 2 younger brothers. She set up a GoFundMe to cover funeral expenses, medical costs for her brother, and the everyday expenses of a family that just lost its primary source of emotional and financial support. She wrote on that page, "I would never blame my mother for her DV situation ever. It's difficult to go through, and she was extremely loved by her family and friends." That is a 22-year-old woman who just watched her mother die, who stood there on the phone with 911 while it happened, and who still found the grace to protect her mother's name in public. That kind of love does not come from nowhere. It came from Yesenia. It came from the woman who raised her. The 16-year-old is recovering at Lincoln Hospital. His voice is coming back slowly. The physical wounds will heal in time. The other wounds, the ones that do not show up on a medical chart, those take longer. That boy saved his sister's life. He made a decision in a split second that most adults would not have been able to make, and he is going to have to figure out how to carry that, along with everything else, for the rest of his life. Yesenia Hall was 42 years old. She was a mother, a neighbor, and a woman described by everyone who knew her as bright, ambitious, and deeply loved. She deserved more mornings. She deserved to watch her son find his voice again. She deserved to see Jayla step fully into herself. She deserved to be there when that 12-year-old boy grows up and understands the fullness of what his family went through. She did not get any of that. And the man responsible is sitting on Rikers Island with a bandaged hand and a long list of charges that still cannot give back what he took. If any part of this story feels familiar, if you are in something that sounds like what Yesenia was in, please reach out. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day at 1-800-799-7233. Your life is worth that phone call. Yesenia's name deserves to mean something beyond this story. Let it mean that somebody else made a different choice. Her name was Yesenia Hall. Say it again. Yesenia Hall. If this story moved you, you already know what to do. Subscribe to Behind Dark Crime, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. These stories deserve to be told, and we are going to keep telling them. Stay safe out there.